I never thought that at 60 years old, I would be sitting in a quiet little house in Portland, staring at a phone that wasn't even mine, trying to understand how the man I spent most of my lifetime with had managed to hide an entirely different world behind a gentle smile. People think betrayal hits harder when you're young because you're sensitive and inexperienced. But the truth is, it cuts deeper when you're older because you don't just lose trust, you lose the entire history you built with someone. My name is Emily, and the story I'm about to tell you, it still shakes me, not because of what I found, but because of what it revealed about the person I thought I knew better than anyone. My husband, Richard, and I had been married for nearly 40 years. We used to joke that we had spent more time together than apart, that our memories were built like layers of paint, some thick, some faded, but still forming the same picture. But sometimes a picture looks perfect only from a distance. Up close, the cracks are everywhere. That morning started like any other. I woke up before sunrise, the way I always did, because older habits cling to you like shadows. Richard was already gone. He liked his early walks, said they cleared his head. I used to believe him without question. Trust is funny that way. You don't inspect it until something forces your hand. I made coffee, opened the kitchen window, listened to the distant hum of cars. Everything felt normal, ordinary, safe. And then his phone buzzed on the counter. Richard never left his phone behind, not once in decades. He could forget his wallet, his keys, even his own glasses, but never that phone. For a moment, I just stared at it, confused. Maybe he was rushing. Maybe he planned to come back. Maybe it was nothing. But then it buzzed again. And again. 2 messages. Then a third. Something inside me tightened. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just a strange awareness, the kind you get moments before a storm begins. I stepped closer. The screen lit up with a notification. Good morning, R. Just a single letter. R. Like someone who'd been around long enough to shorten his name. Someone comfortable enough to greet him at 6 a.m. Someone who wasn't me. I shouldn't have clicked it. I know that. People always say the same thing. If you go looking for something, you'll find it. But I wasn't looking. I was just standing there, watching the life I knew flicker on a screen. I tapped the message. More popped up, flooding the conversation like a river breaking its dam. I miss you. Last night kept replaying in my head. When are you telling her? My breath left my body, just slipped out like it didn't belong there anymore. When are you telling her? Her. Me. They meant me. My hands trembled. The entire kitchen spun in silence. 40 years of marriage, years of arguments, apologies, vacations, birthdays, anniversaries. All of it suddenly felt like someone else's story. My throat tightened so sharply I couldn't breathe for a moment. I scrolled further, and there she was. A name. Clara. I whispered it out loud, testing the unfamiliar taste of it. Clara. A stranger. A woman I had never seen, never heard of, yet she had a place in his phone like she'd been waiting there for years. I felt my knees weaken like gravity itself was trying to yank me down. I kept reading. I had to. I don't know if it was shock or desperation or habit, but I needed to know everything. Tomorrow was incredible. I can still feel your touch. I hate hiding. I want a life with you. You deserve someone who chooses you. You're still strong, still beautiful. Don't let her make you feel old. That last line hit me like a punch I never saw coming. Still beautiful. Don't let her make you feel old. So that's what he told her. That I made him feel old, that I was the reason he wanted someone younger, that I was the burden in the story he was rewriting. My chest tightened with a pain I can't describe. Not anger. Not yet. just a cold, hollow ache. Have you ever lived so long with someone that their betrayal feels like it's coming from inside your own body? That's what it felt like something inside me cracked open. But the messages didn't stop there. He had been planning something bigger than cheating. There were hints, broken phrases, scattered like clues. I'll handle the paperwork soon. She won't fight it. She trusts me too much. Once everything is signed, we can finally leave. Leave. He wanted to leave me. Not talk, not fix, not explain. Leave. And not only that, he thought I wouldn't fight it. He thought I trusted him too much. He thought I was old, weak, predictable. He thought I would accept whatever he threw at me without even asking why. I sat down slowly on the dining chair, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. I read every message twice, sometimes 3 times. I couldn't stop. My heart was pounding against my ribs, trying to break free. My mind was racing so fast, I couldn't latch on to a single thought. Then I noticed something strange. The messages were recent, not years old, not even months old. The affair had started barely 8 weeks ago. 8 weeks. And yet the intensity in the messages, they spoke like lovers who'd known each other forever, like they built an entire universe behind my back. My lip trembled. My eyes burned. But tears didn't fall yet. I wasn't ready to cry. I felt frozen, like a woman watching her house burn from behind a window, unable to shout for help. Just then, the front door opened. "Em, you awake?" His voice. Casual, familiar. Like nothing was wrong. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the messages like they were still burning holes through the screen. He walked into the kitchen, humming lightly, wiping his sweat from his forehead like he had just finished his morning walk. He stopped when he saw me. And then he froze when he saw the phone in my hand. For a moment, we just stared at each other. He didn't speak. He didn't deny. He didn't rush to explain. The first thing he did was reach for the phone. Not for me, not for my feelings, for the phone. Something inside me snapped. I pulled it away from him. Finally, I found my voice, though it came out cracked and shaky. "How long?" He stepped back slightly. His eyes darted around like he was trying to find a version of the truth that didn't make him look guilty. But guilt was dripping off him like sweat. "Emily, listen, I can explain." "How long?" He swallowed hard. "A couple of months. It's complicated." Complicated. That's what he called it. Not betrayal, not manipulation, not 40 years tossed aside like an old coat. Complicated. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Something shifted inside me. The shock melted into something else. Something sharper. Something stronger. I stared at him, tears finally filling my eyes, but not tears of weakness. Tears of awakening. "Richard," I whispered, "you have no idea what you just started." He looked confused, maybe even afraid. And he should have been, because that was the moment I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to let him walk away quietly. I wasn't going to let him rewrite our life as if I never mattered. And I wasn't going to let Clara, whoever she was, think she won. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of something he never expected. The beginning of what I would do next. And what I did stunned him more than he could have ever imagined. The silence after Richard's confession was heavier than anything I had felt in my entire life. It settled in the room like dust on old furniture, slow but suffocating. He stood there, shifting uncomfortably, his eyes darting everywhere except my face. I realized in that moment that this man, the one I spent 40 years building a life with, didn't know how to look at me anymore. Maybe because he knew I wasn't the same woman from 10 minutes ago. The Emily who trusted him blindly, she was gone. He tried to speak again, but his voice cracked. Emily, please, it just happened. Just happened. That's what they always say when the truth becomes inconvenient. I stared at him, not blinking, not breathing too deeply, just studying him, the way a stranger studies another stranger. How long? I repeated quietly, my voice steady this time. He exhaled shakily. 8 weeks, maybe 9. 8 weeks. Almost 2 months. It felt impossible. How could someone create an entire double life in just 8 weeks? But that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't need time, it needs opportunity. And trust gives the perfect opportunity. I nodded slowly, holding the phone like it was the last piece of evidence in a trial. Okay, I whispered. He looked relieved when I said that, as if my calmness meant acceptance, as if I was already folding into whatever narrative he wanted next. He didn't realize the storm inside me was only beginning. I need some time, I said, placing the phone on the table. I need space to think. He nodded too quickly. Of course, I understand. I'll go for another walk. Clear my head. Clear his head. The same excuse he used every morning, the same walk he probably used to call her, message her, plan with her, a routine betrayal wrapped in a harmless habit. He left the house, gently closing the door behind him, like he didn't just tear the ground out from under my feet. The moment I was alone, my body finally reacted. My legs gave out, and I slid down onto the kitchen floor. The cold tiles pressed into my skin, but I barely felt them. I pressed my palms against my face and let out a long, shaking breath. The tears I'd been holding back finally fell, slow and heavy, dropping onto the floor between my knees. It wasn't the kind of crying you see in movies, loud, dramatic. No. This was the quiet kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep you can't find the bottom of it. The kind that doesn't ask for attention, it just happens because your heart doesn't know what else to do. For a long time, I didn't move. I just sat there, breathing slowly, letting the weight of the truth settle into my bones. 40 years. 40 years of shared life, conversations, holidays, arguments, repairs, compromises, all reduced to a handful of messages from a woman named Clara. Eventually, I stood up, wiped my face, and caught my reflection in the oven door. My eyes were swollen, red, older than they looked yesterday. But something else was there too. A quiet strength, a spark. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I walked back to the table and picked up his phone again. I didn't scroll any further. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. I went to pour myself a glass of water, but my hands were shaking so badly that the glass clinked against the counter. I held it against my chest for a moment, grounding myself. And then, slowly, a thought formed. A dangerous thought. A necessary thought. He thought I wouldn't fight him. He thought I was weak. He thought I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, no strength left in me. But betrayal does something to a woman, especially one who's been quiet her whole life. It wakes something up. Something fierce. Something that refuses to go down quietly. I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. I walked into our bedroom, his bedroom now, and scanned the space like I had never seen it before. Everything looked different. The bed we had shared for decades suddenly looked like a stranger's bed. His clothes hanging neatly, his shoes under the edge, his cologne on the dresser. The familiarity hurt more than the truth. I opened his drawer, not because I wanted to snoop, but because I needed to know who I was dealing with. What kind of man Richard really was when no one was watching. Inside, I found papers, bank statements, insurance documents, pension reports. Nothing unusual, but then at the back, I found something folded. A printout. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was a rental application. A condo in another city. Signed by him. dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, meaning he planned to leave me before I ever saw those messages. My breath caught in my throat. My hands shook harder than before. He wasn't confused. He wasn't torn. He wasn't struggling with guilt or conflict. He was preparing. Quietly. Carefully. Secretly. I sat on the bed with the paper in my hands and just stared. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was logistical. Cold. Calculated. He planned to leave me in the cleanest way possible. No fight, no noise, no confrontation. He wanted to slip away like a thief in the night, leaving me with whatever scraps were left. That realization lit something inside me. Not rage. Not at first. Something calmer. Sharper. Like a blade being honed. He underestimated me, and that was his first mistake. I put the paper back exactly where I found it. I didn't want him to know I knew. Not yet. I wanted him comfortable, relaxed. I wanted him believing he still had the upper hand. Because when someone believes they're in control, they slip. And when they slip, you finally see their real weakness. I got up and started straightening the bedroom. Not because it was messy, it wasn't, but because I needed something to do. My hands needed motion, even if my heart was a storm. As I folded a blanket, a memory hit me. A soft one. From years ago. Richard laughing at something I said at dinner. We were younger then. Full of life, full of dreams. For a moment, the memory hurt so deeply that I felt myself sway. But then I reminded myself, that man was gone. Or maybe that man never existed. Maybe I fell in love with the version he wanted me to see. The door opened again. Richard would turn. I quickly wiped my eyes, straightened my back, and turned toward him. He froze when he saw me. I could tell he wasn't expecting me to look composed. Strong. Almost calm. Emily, are you okay? Fine. Just thinking. He searched my face, trying to read me, trying to guess what I had seen, what I planned. He stepped closer, but I didn't move toward him. He sensed the distance immediately. Do you want to talk? No, not now. He nodded slowly, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief. He thought I was shutting down. He thought I was processing the pain quietly, like I always did. He had no idea what was brewing inside me. He walked away, heading to the bathroom. The moment the door closed, I sat down on the bed again and exhaled deeply. My chest tightened again, but I pushed the feeling down. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart twice in one day. I picked up the phone and looked at it. Not the messages, just the phone itself. That little device held every secret he thought I would never discover. A world he built behind my back. As I held it, a new idea sparked. One that made my heart race. If Richard could hide things from me, then I could hide things from him too. For the first time since the morning began, I felt something close to control return to me. Not revenge. Not yet. Just power. The kind that comes from knowing something someone else doesn't know you know. When he walked out of the bathroom, he saw me sitting still, lost in thought. He hesitated, unsure what to say. Emily, he said softly, as if trying to be gentle now that the truth was out. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I didn't look at him. You never do. I whispered. He didn't respond. The truth didn't need a reply. I kept my gaze on the floor, my voice low but steady. Richard, I'm tired. I need rest. He nodded. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Do whatever you want, I said calmly. He hesitated again, then walked out. The moment he was gone, I finally let myself exhale a long, deep breath. But instead of collapsing again, something else rose inside me. A plan. A direction. A quiet resolve. If he was preparing to walk away, the night after discovering Richard's messages was the longest night of my life. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a reminder that time was moving forward and that my life, as I knew it, wasn't. Richard slept in the guest room down the hall, breathing deep and steady, like a man with a clean conscience. The audacity of his comfort made something twist inside me. I turned onto my side and closed my eyes, but every time I did, the messages flashed behind them like ghosts. Her words, his replies, the plans they made, the future they sketched without me. My chest tightened with every thought. But instead of breaking, something inside me hardened. By the time morning arrived, my face felt swollen from the lack of sleep, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The pain was still there, deep, sharp, pulsing, but now it was fueled by purpose, a quiet determination that replaced helplessness. When I walked into the kitchen, the soft sunlight was spilling through the windows, warming the tiles. The house looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Richard was already there, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in his hands. He looked up at me, startled, as if he expected me to still be in bed, still devastated, still broken. "Morning," he said, carefully. I nodded, but didn't say it back. I walked past him, opened the cabinet, pulled out a mug, and poured myself coffee. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised me. It shouldn't have. The night had done something to me. Something I couldn't fully explain yet. He watched me with a strange, uneasy expression, like he was waiting for something to explode. But I wasn't going to explode. No, that would be too easy for him, too predictable. "Did you sleep?" he asked softly. "A little," I replied, taking a slow sip. He cleared his throat. I want to explain." I set my cup down and looked at him directly. "Explain what? That you fell out of love with me? That you chose someone else? That you were planning to leave without even letting me ask why?" His face paled. He hadn't expected me to know so much. His jaw tensed. "You looked through my things," he said quietly. I shrugged. "You left your things in my house." He didn't know what to say. Good. Silence sometimes exposes more truth than words. He said after a moment, "I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You didn't want to hurt me, Richard. You were ready to walk out the door without even letting me ask why." He swallowed. I was confused." "No, you were selfish." He flinched. The truth has a way of doing that. He lowered his gaze. "I never wanted you to find out like this." My voice softened, but not out of sympathy, out of clarity. "You didn't want me to find out at all." He didn't deny it. That told me everything. The silence stretched. The clock ticked again. His coffee steamed lazily, like the world didn't care that my life was splitting down the middle. Finally, I spoke again. "Richard, I need space today." He nodded quickly, too quickly. "Of course. I'll be out for most of the day." Of course he would be. Maybe with her. Maybe somewhere planning. Maybe somewhere hiding. It didn't matter. What mattered is that I finally had time alone, time to think, time to prepare. He grabbed his jacket, hesitated for a moment, then said, "Emily, I'm sorry." I looked at him with the calmest face I could manage. "No, you're not, but you will be." I didn't mean for the words to sound so cold, but they came out that way because they were true. He froze for a second, staring at me, trying to decipher what I meant, but he didn't ask. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he thought I was meant something emotional, heartbreak, despair. Maybe he thought I was just reacting. He didn't understand yet. He would. When he left, closing the door behind him, I stood there for a moment, letting the quietness settle into the house again. The stillness didn't feel painful this time. It felt necessary. I walked slowly to the living room and sat down on the couch. Then I took a breath, long, deep, steady, and spoke out loud, to no one but myself. You are not done, Emily. And for the first time in years, I felt the truth of my own words. My mind began racing, not chaotically, but with clarity. I had to know more, not because I wanted to torture myself with details, but because information was power. And for the first time in my life, I needed power. I went to my desk drawer and pulled out something I hadn't used in a long time, my old journal. On the surface, it looked innocent, a simple blue book with floral edges, but inside were years of my thoughts, experiences, and things I never said out loud. Today, I would write again, but not about emotions. I started writing facts. Dates, times, messages, observations. Everything I remembered from his phone, everything he slipped in conversation, everything he didn't say. It wasn't petty, it wasn't crazy. It was preparation. Because when someone lies to you once, they lie again, and again, and again. And I needed to stay ahead of every step. As I wrote, I noticed patterns. He became distant exactly 8 weeks ago, the same time the messages started. He began staying out late under the excuse of errands. He smiled at his phone more often. He guarded it more closely. My pen moved faster with each line. Then something unexpected happened. As I wrote, I realized I wasn't crying, not even a single tear. The pain was there, burning, aching, but it no longer controlled me. It fueled me. When I finished writing, I closed the journal and held it against my chest. A small part of me felt guilty, like I was turning into someone I didn't recognize. But then I remembered he had created this version of me. His betrayal carved it out of me. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and opened my closet. I scanned through the clothes. The same dresses I had worn for years, safe colors, soft designs, nothing bold. I pulled out an old box from the top shelf, the one I hadn't touched since we moved to this house. Inside were pictures, younger versions of us smiling, traveling, celebrating anniversaries. I stared at them for a long moment. My heart squeezed painfully, but then a thought drifted into my mind. People change, but betrayal reveals who they truly are. I placed the photos back into the box, closed it, and shoved it deeper into the closet. Enough nostalgia, enough mourning. It was time to look forward, not backward. When I walked back into the living room, something unexpected happened. A knock at the door. Sharp. Quick. I froze. For a moment, I wondered if Richard had forgotten something. But the knock didn't sound like his. It was too light, too hesitant. I walked to the door slowly, feeling a strange twist in my stomach. When I opened it, I was surprised to see a familiar face. My neighbor, Lisa. She lived 2 houses down, a warm woman in her late 40s with kind eyes, curly hair, and a comforting presence. We weren't best friends, but we had always shared friendly conversations, exchanged baked goods during holidays, and waved at each other in the mornings. "Hi," she said softly. "Sorry to show up like this. I saw Richard leaving earlier." Is everything okay? The question cracked something inside me. Not pain, but relief. For the first time since yesterday, someone looked at me with genuine concern. Not guilt, not denial, not lies. I stepped aside and let her in. As she sat on the couch, I realized how exhausted I looked through her eyes. Pale, tense, shattered. I took a breath. I didn't want to collapse in front of her, but I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. Something happened, I said quietly. Her brows furrowed. Do you want to talk about it? I hesitated. And then I told her. Not everything, not the messages word for word, not the rental application, not the years of trust, but enough. Enough for her to understand that the man I had built a life with had built a separate world behind my back. When she finished speaking, Lisa covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide. Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, I whispered. I didn't. Richard came home late that night, long after the sun had disappeared and the sky had settled into that deep, heavy silence Florida nights were famous for. The kind of silence where you can hear your own thoughts. The kind of silence where guilt becomes loud. Emily heard the garage door slide open, slow, almost hesitant, as if even the house knew something had changed. She stayed seated at the dining table, the same place where she used to wait for him with warm food, soft smiles, and a heart that believed he was hers completely. Tonight, there was no warmth on the table, just papers, a pen, and a calmness in her posture that didn't match the chaos in her past few days. Richard walked inside, the smell of someone else's perfume trailing behind him. He didn't notice that she noticed. He never did. That was his talent, assuming Emily was too soft, too gentle, too old to see the truth. He placed his keys on the counter, clearing his throat in that dramatic way he always used when he wanted to appear stressed, tired, overworked. He forgot that Emily had memorized him for 35 years. She knew when he was pretending, and she knew tonight's tiredness wasn't from work. It was from guilt and from fear. Emily, he said, avoiding his eyes, you're still awake? She simply nodded. Her voice was steady, almost warm. I wanted to talk to you. Those words froze him. He swallowed hard, pretending to adjust his shirt, his watch, anything that might distract him from the truth crawling toward him. He sat down across from her, eyes scanning the table, nervous at the sight of documents. What's all this? Emily didn't smile, she didn't tremble, she didn't accuse. She simply pushed a paper toward him and said, You've been planning something behind my back, so I thought I should plan something too. He blinked twice, confused. Then his eyes drifted over the page and his face dropped. It was a copy of their house deed, her inheritance funds, her property statements, and her lawyer's card. His fingers twitched, and he looked at her with a pathetic attempt at innocence. What is this supposed to mean, Emily? She didn't break eye contact. It means I'm not as blind as you think. Richard froze again, panic flickering in his eyes. He suddenly remembered the messages, his secret messages, his stupid messages, the ones he thought Emily would never see. He forced a laugh, a weak, trembling one. Oh, come on, you're misunderstanding again. You always jump to conclude. Emily, she said softly, stop lying. You're tired, I'm tired. Let's not insult each other. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Emily leaned back in her chair. She looked calm, but inside she could feel her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She was not weak, she was not broken, but the betrayal had burned through her like acid, and she had to keep an iron grip on her emotions so her voice didn't shake. She said, I saw the messages, all of them. Richard's jaw tightened. His fingers dug into the table as he exhaled sharply, like a man cornered. For a moment, Emily could see the truth surface on his face, fear, guilt, anger, regret, all swirling together, before he quickly hid them behind a fake expression. So what? He said too quickly. You shouldn't have gone through my... Emily, whispered, and her voice dropped to a tone he had never heard from her. You had someone else. You planned to leave me. You wanted to walk away from everything I built with you. You wanted to take what my parents left me and hand it to her." Richard looked stunned. "What are you talking about? That's insane. You're twisting everything. You were looking for apartments. You told her she'd pay for her move. You told her she deserved better than a boring old wife." His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, he had nothing to say. The silence between them grew heavy, like a thick fog swallowing the room. Emily breathed slowly. "I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to throw things. I simply want the truth." But Richard was not made of truth. He was made of ego, excuses, and the belief that Emily would always stay soft, always stay forgiving. He scoffed, rubbing his forehead. "Emily, this is ridiculous. You're overreacting. It was just flirting. She was just someone I talked to. You've been so distant lately. I needed—" "There it is," she said quietly. "Blame me." He froze. Emily's voice softened even more, calm like the deep end of the ocean. "Richard, all these years, you could have talked to me. You could have told me you felt lonely. You could have told me I wasn't enough. But you didn't. You chose deception. You chose to hurt me behind my back instead of facing me." Richard stood up suddenly, pacing the room. "This is insane. You're blowing everything out of proportion. Nothing happened, okay? Nothing physical. It was a plan," Emily completed. "A plan to leave me before our anniversary, a plan to take my investment money and fund your new life with her." His face went pale. Emily finally said what she had been holding inside. "I trusted you more than I trusted myself, and you threw me away like I was nothing." Richard's shoulders slumped. His voice broke a little. "Emily, please, I didn't mean to hurt you." But she wasn't the same woman he had betrayed. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She had changed. "I know, Richard. You didn't think at all. That's the problem." He walked back to the table, trying to regain control. "So what now? You want to end everything after all these years?" Emily inhaled. "What I want is very simple." Richard leaned forward cautiously. "What?" "I want you to see what it feels like, to experience the same helplessness you gave me." His eyes widened in confusion. "Emily, what are you talking about?" She stood up slowly, her posture straight, confident, unshakable. "You'll see. Not today, not tonight, but very soon." The fear on his face was unmistakable, but she wasn't done. Emily picked up the envelope she had prepared earlier, calmly, as though she were cleaning up after dinner. She placed it in front of him. Richard stared at it. "What's this now?" Emily simply said, "Step 1. Inside that envelope was the beginning of her plan, the seeds she had planted, the moves she had made without him knowing, the actions that would make everything he had tried to hide suddenly unravel right in front of him. But she didn't explain. Let him wonder. Let him panic. Let him suffer the same sleepless nights she did. Emily walked past him, her presence colder than winter wind. Richard grabbed her arm gently. "Emily, please, tell me what you're doing." She turned her head slightly, enough for him to see her eyes, calm, steady, powerful. "I'm doing what you never expected. I'm standing up for myself." Then she pulled her arm away and walked upstairs, leaving Richard alone in the kitchen, staring at the envelope like it was a bomb. In a way, it was. He opened it with trembling fingers, his breath uneven, and what he saw inside made his entire body freeze. His heart sank into his stomach. His world tilted. Because for the first time since his affair began, Richard realized something terrifying. Emily wasn't the one who should be afraid. He was. And this was only the beginning. Richard didn't sleep that night. He didn't even pretend to. Emily could hear him pacing downstairs, slow, uneven steps, the kind a man takes when he finally realizes he isn't the one in control anymore. For years, he believed Emily was soft, fragile, predictable. But the woman he saw tonight was nothing like the wife he'd taken for granted. She wasn't crying, she wasn't begging, She wasn't broken. She was planning. At sunrise, Emily stood by the window watching the golden light spread across the neighborhood. Florida always had this way of looking peaceful, even when your whole world was falling apart. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and took a calm breath. Today was the day everything changed, not because she wanted revenge in the destructive sense, but because she finally chose herself. After 60 years of life, after decades of marriage, after a betrayal that cracked her heart open, she was ready to close the chapter with dignity.